What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another post game here on Mets Central. And the Mets dropped their series finale to the Yankees by a final score of 6-4. Just unfortunately, couldn't get it done. I think I speak for both fan bases by the end of the series when I say that the MLB, I cannot wait for them to implement the ABS system full time into the regular season because holy crap, it is so frustrating with how fragile these umpires are, especially watching them behind the dish making these egregious calls time and time again. That's not the sole reason the Mets lost. There were some questionable managerial decisions at points, piss poor base running way too many times, and quite honestly, they pissed all over themselves, which is something unfortunately that they have done a lot throughout the season. Let's talk about it, though before we jump into everything. Leave a like on your way into the show, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on Met Central. And it's just very frustrating because this loss was very similar to the losses of earlier in the season, where you look at the pitching matchup and you see the Mets throw an opener out there. First, Max Fried. I had no confidence going into this game, quite frankly. But it's the fact that they made this game close and fell short that makes me so aggravated with this loss because that's just what this team has done a lot this season. We'll look at the pitching matchup, say, oh, they're going to probably lose today. They make it closer than we think they will. And then it's like we're mad because they don't end up sealing the deal and getting the win there. Just a lot of bad fortune throughout this game as well for them between catches in the outfield that you just credit Bellinger for making and the throw that he made too, but also just again poor base running at the same time on the Mets part with that. I just there are so many things from this game to unpack that you could sit here and analyze and say you micromanage this better and maybe the Mets come away with the win, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. Well, I mean, we'll talk about it, though. Like you fast forward to the third inning after Davinsky, by the way, Chris Davinsky, major credit to him giving two great innings early on in this game. He only allowed one hit, got a couple strikeouts early. I thought he put the Mets in a spot where, okay, now you really are in a good spot to go out there and get some good work from the bullpen. You got two innings down already from Davinsky. Let's see what happens. Zach Pop comes in, and I just wanted one inning from him. He allowed the home run to Wells, which pissed me off. But right then and there, I was like, okay, don't give him another inning because he struggled to begin with. He allowed a single two to Grisham. I didn't want him getting another inning. And this is where my first gripe came in with a managerial decision because he goes back out there for the fourth inning. After the Stanton double, why is Brandon Waddell not in the game? You had him warmed up and ready to go with the lefty coming up in Cody Bellinger. Why are you not going to the bullpen there to put Waddell in? And it ends up backfiring there as Cody Bellinger gets a single. Volpe hits a new force out, which made it 2-0. And then still he's in the game. Volpe steals a bag. LeMahieu gets a single, and then they go to Waddell, who gets a force out, and that made it a 3-0 game. So the Mets put themselves behind the eight ball way too early. And in the fifth inning, Brandon Waddell, he's throwing strikes, which I want him to do there, but just allowing some contact. Goldschmidt had a double. Aaron Judge then. This is where I really got aggravated, though, with the incompetence of the manager, though. You have first base open. No reason to pitch to Aaron Judge there. There's no reason to pitch to Judge in that spot. And instead, they choose to pitch the Judge. First pitch changeup, absolutely tanked to make it a 5-0 game for the Yankees, which you could say either way. Okay, if they walked Judge, Stanton would have had a sac fly. But I mean, with how tight this game ended up becoming, a 4-0 game might have been different than what it was. Also, there are things where you could go back to yesterday's game and say, okay, well, if you have a fresh Ryan Stanek and a fresh Edwin Diaz, maybe you're able to navigate these innings a little bit easier because if Zach Pop pitched yesterday and you brought up a fresh arm today, maybe things go a little bit differently here. Again, if team, if scenarios, but it's also just very annoying that this was kind of a spiral effect from yesterday's game as well. And in the bottom of the fifth inning, the Mets had themselves a little bit of a rally. You get three straight singles from McNeil, Senga, and Marte to load the bases up. Lindor gets a single to make it 5-2. And then Juan Soto in that at bat, he ends up striking out. And then Pete Alonso flies out to end the inning. Just unfortunate that the Mets couldn't add on to the run total there. So 5-2 by the end of that, though. And then the bottom of the sixth inning, Ronnie or Brandon Nimmo led off the inning, gets hit by a pitch. They get to the bullpen. Ronnie Mauricio with a single, Beatty with a single. Credit to Mendoza there, though, for making the right decisions, pushing the right buttons, pinch hitting both Vientos and Taylor there as he should. McNeil gets a single, which made it 5-3. They got some help from the fact that the Yankees defense was just god awful there. And then this is where I'm also a little bit annoyed because you had an opportunity to tie the game here in the sixth inning. So you have the bases loaded with no outs. Why is Hayden Senga hitting there? I know that Torrens has caught a lot recently, but right then and there, that was the opportunity. That is the spot where you put Luis Torrens into the game because you could break it open. At the very least, at the very worst, Senga should not have swung the bat at all because you have the top of the order coming up. Why is he going up there first pitch swinging? And he ends up hitting into a double play. It brought a run in, but he should not have even swung the bat there. He shouldn't have even been up at the plate there. Another very questionable decision, in my opinion. And then Marte hits into a line out there. Judge with just a good grab there in right field. And then we go to the seventh inning. Brazoban did not look great today. Allowed a couple of singles. Sac fly to Aaron Judge, which also Pete Alonso just did not make a grab over there at first base like he should have on the Trent Grisham one. And, that changes things as well. Then we go to the seventh inning. And how many times this year has this happened to the Mets? Another opportunity for them to really blow the game, or not blow the game open, but I should say another opportunity to claw their way back in and potentially tie this up. Lindor gets hit by a pitch, and then Juan Soto hits a fly ball to left field. Bellinger makes a grab that I still cannot believe he ended up making the grab on, and then he doubles up Lindor at first. I don't know how many times the Mets have got doubled up on fly balls to the outfield this year, but one, it feels like a lot. Two, why is Lindor not sliding back to first base there? That was also just very confusing. Because if he slides, he's safe. Just very poor base running there. Alonso then walks. Tim Hill comes in, gets Nimmo to hit into a force out. And then Garcia comes in. Credit to him, giving two good innings for this team. And then the bottom of the eighth, same thing. You get a leadoff single. Brett Beatty hits a ground ball. Mauricio's in no man's land, and then he ends up getting doubled up there, and that ended that inning. And then we get to the bottom of the ninth inning, and Luis Torrens, I cannot believe those calls that are still on Luis Torrens. That was just absolutely egregious. And Mendoza was pissed after the second strike that was called. You could tell that third call was out of pettiness from the ump. You could tell that ump wanted to do that because Mendoza was yelling at him. I cannot wait for the automated system because these umpires are softer than puppy shit with, you can't take the heat from these managers, so you just call a petty strike at the end there. And I was happy to see him go out there and argue with the ump and get ejected. The Mets, unfortunately, don't even, show signs of a rally at all. But in the ninth, that is, I should say. But yeah, they had this game in the palm of their hands at points, and they just unfortunately let it go. They unfortunately could not get their way back in fully. Putting themselves down early 5-0 was just not going to help. Again, questionable decisions, in my opinion, throughout this game. And yesterday's questionable decisions clearly bled into today's decisions because if you go differently with, if Diaz doesn't pitch the ninth inning yesterday, or if you were able to avoid both Stanek and Diaz yesterday, which they should have, especially with the lead they had at one point during that game. And again, they just continued to make it close and everything. But everything bled into one another. And unfortunately, they were never in a spot to win this game, ideally. But once this game played out, there was a chance to win it. And unfortunately, like I said, between yesterday's decisions, between some decisions today, they just weren't able to get the win. And I'll take 2 out of 3, considering that this team needs to win series. Considering going into it, I said win 2 out of 3, and I said that they would win the 2 games they did, and then lose that third game because it's a bullpen game and because Max Fried's on the other side. So, is it coping? Maybe, but at the same time as well, like going into the series, that's what I said you need to ideally do. It's just very unfortunate, again, as this played out, that they could have had this game. So, yeah, now they get the off day, which this team desperately needs an off day as well. So I'm very thankful for that. And then they play Baltimore for a 3 game set. So yeah, that we'll see how that unfolds, because this team has not been great on the road this year. So hopefully, again, just win each series at the very least. So let me see what you guys are saying in the chat right now. Someone throw that home plate into shark infested waters. He was god awful. All series long, the umps were garbage on both ends. I don't want to sound like I'm just whining for the sake of it. You can go back to game one, even. I said it then that the umps were egregious. This entire series, just dog shit work by the umps the entire way through. I'm so glad that that part of this is over, because it's just so stupid that they are this bad. I'm tired of hearing, but you need the human element. Is it really that much better than getting the correct call? On one hand, you can't let the umps control the game. On the other hand, the umps were completely ridiculous for not only the Mets, for both sides today. Can't wait for the ABS system. Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. It just I don't like to blame umps, and again, it's deeper than the umps today's loss, but that was just completely that was just horrible. Absolutely horrible at the end. Yeah, I'm glad that he did that too, and I was glad that he ran out of the dugout freaking right away to argue that. That was not only entertaining, but he needed to get thrown out there, because someone had to tell this ump. Yeah, Marte's been playing better ball lately. I gotta admit that. He had a good day. It's unfortunate that with men on base, that ball didn't drop in right field. But what are you gonna do? Mets need to get an ace pitcher. They just need a starting pitcher at the very least right now. And yeah, I mean, I feel the same way, Jake. That thought the Yankees were gonna take 2 out. I mean, I predicted 2 out of 3 for the Mets, but I also wasn't confident. So yeah, I mean, again, this was just ideally this was a good series for the Mets overall. Just in terms of the fact that I had very low expectations like you did. And considering the circumstances from today, I'm fine with the way that, the results unfolded. It just sucks that they couldn't steal this game, because they just did not have the juice to from the pitching staff. And then on top of that, I mean, part of this lineup, you just need you need some bigger hits as well throughout this game at certain points. Then you also again had the Yankees just playing freaking ridiculous defense at points. But I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you know when I upload or go live here on Met Central. I'll see you guys in the next one.